Hi again everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. I thought it was time that I revisited a recent meme stock darling that has been given, at least on first impressions, a horrid makeover, that being Greenidge Generation, ticker symbol GREE. To say that investors of this stock since it went public last week would be disappointed is perhaps the understatement of the year. The stock has effectively lost about 80% of its value since its reverse merger deal with support.com, which gave the stock a converted value of about $103 per share, falling to below $60 within its first hour of trade, and then finishing yesterday's session at a new all-time low of $25.40 per share. So despite all this doom and gloom, one has to wonder, how much lower can the stock go? And there is another interesting scenario that is emerging, in that GREE could soon be emerging as a crazy short squeeze candidate. So let's have a look at how all of this is stacking up at the moment. So here is how the stock has fared since last Wednesday when GREE first listed on the exchange, and it has not been pretty. It has been a very sad bleeding away of value for the stock. I think that when the heavy losses started piling in for the legacy support.com shareholders, confidence in the stock has evaporated and become totally non-existent. The RSI has never really reached the neutral position of 50 and has generally spent most of the past week in oversold territory. Furthermore, only on one occasion has the stock touched the moving average since my trading platform could establish a Bollinger Band trading range. And it has not helped GREE stock that Bitcoin has had a rough 7 days with a sharp drop seen earlier this week. I'm sure most people following the stock are aware that much of the fortunes of this new entity are tied to the Bitcoin price, as well as the business's ability to mine it. In terms of support.com stock, Greenidge Generation is trading at the equivalent of $2.92 per share, indicated by the blue dotted line. So we are looking at a massive fall from the $60 mark that the stock hit just prior to the merger in a short squeeze effort. This current low stock level hasn't been seen since back in June, and is closer to the price range that support.com experienced pre-merger announcement in March. In terms of that short squeeze, I had this yellow line to indicate the price point where the support.com short squeeze could easily buckle and come undone, and that is exactly what has happened. Just to give you a perspective of how far from grace this short squeeze effort has fallen, if you were to have shorted support.com at the $60 mark and cashed out today, you would be laughing. Say you had shorted 1,000 shares at $60, aka a $60,000 position, you would have returned them for the equivalent of just under $3,000, which is a profit of over $57,000 before borrowing and brokerage fees are accounted for. These types of returns make Michael Burry look like a bit of a schmuck. So moving on from the past support.com short squeeze, this leads us to the question of, is there a possibility of a short squeeze for GREE stock? The answer is yes, there is definitely an opportunity arising. It may not seem like much that only 3.57% of the entire float is currently shorted, but with a borrow fee of almost 117%, something is definitely up with the stock in terms of the short interest in it. So if you look back at the merger details, you would see that support.com shareholders were to account for approximately 7.7% of the new entity, and these are the shares which are effectively listed, the Class A shares that have 1/10 of the voting rights of Class B shares, and it is somewhat fair to assume that this 7.7% of the company is what is currently being traded. The Class B shares in GREE are held by the existing insiders and institutions, and they won't be in a hurry to relinquish them due to their superior voting rights, which will become even more important when the inevitable future capital raisings occur for this company. Now, if you can remember back to support.com pre-merger, about 64% of their stock was held by insiders and institutions. In the event that this ratio has remained post-merger, then this would mean only 2.755% of the float is available to the public. And with 3.57% of the total float now currently shorted, that would mean over 100% of the publicly available float is being shorted. If this is the case, then the stock is hugely shorted in relation to what is publicly available, and thus makes a strong case for a short squeeze. So having said that, I suppose there are some questions that need to be answered if there is to be a potential short squeeze of Greenidge Generation. Chief among them is, did any of the support insiders/institutions relinquish shares following the merger? The combined holdings of insiders and institutions would now equate to less than 5% of the new GREE entity. Therefore, they would no longer need to disclose their sales on the grounds of being major shareholders in the company. You would also have to look and see if any of the board that ran support.com will have senior management roles in the newly merged entity, which I think is unlikely given the primary function of GREE is to mine Bitcoin, and support.com is now very much an ancillary business in their overall operation. Heck, I wouldn't even be surprised if you were to see support.com getting sold off in the near future in some sort of demerger. This deal was very much about Greenidge Generation getting onto the stock exchange with ease. Anyway, the point is, it is now very unclear if there has been any increase in the publicly available float following the merger. Another very real risk to a potential short squeeze would be the risk that a future capital raising would pose to the effort. It is a very real possibility in the near future, as the goal of the reverse merger was to give Greenidge Generation access to capital markets and the benefits of funding through capital raising. I'm sure future capital raisings will be of the lower classified Class A shares, which would in itself dilute the overall short interest in relation to the publicly available float. And finally, there needs to be questions asked pertaining to the retail confidence behind this possible play. While there has been increased chatter among Reddit users about such a move in recent days, and let's be fair, it's likely to be this crowd that spurs on the play. However, I think overall those that were previously interested in shorting support.com are really hurting and would be hesitant to jump in and try it again with GREE. GREE has been continually dropping since it listed, and I'm sure many are wondering when will it find its bottom. To some, the stock seems massively undervalued at the moment and is dropping due to poor morale around the stock, but the reality is it is hard to put a true value on the assets and earning potential of the stock at present, a problem that is only further exacerbated by the volatility of Bitcoin prices, especially in recent times. So in conclusion, I think yes, the stock could definitely be targeted for a short squeeze given the available data, but I'm doubtful the confidence is there at present for such a play to occur. Anyway, what do you guys think? Have we found the bottom yet for the Greenidge Generation price dip we are seeing? What do you think the likelihood of a short squeeze is with this stock? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time guys, may the markets trade in your favour. Cheers.